Ja, we gaan naar onze keynote-spreker van van de middag, sorry. Dat is Elizabeth Schuch. En zij is een hele bijzondere vrouw, Amerikaanse. Ze is een regisseur, een producent. Ze bedenkt concepten, ze doet pitches, maar vooral maakt ze storyboards. En niet voor de minste films, voor Wonder Woman onder andere, Pacific Rim. Ze schrijft ook. Ze heeft de artfilm Book of Birdie, bekroonde film gemaakt. En ze komt ons vertellen, ze noemt zichzelf een visual storyteller. En ze komt ons vertellen over wat ze doet en waarom ze dat doet. Dus please welcome Elizabeth Schuch.
Thank you. Oh, I don't know about you guys, but if you work from home too, it's really nice to be out of the house and in clothes. So thanks for coming out today. It's really nice to be in a room with people. Let's have a little chat about visual storytelling. It was a dark and stormy night. Think about that phrase. What pops into your head? You may be seeing some lightning. Are you looking out a window into the storm? Maybe you see a big creepy house and the lightning's flashing up behind it. Maybe you see, I don't know, Snoopy at a typewriter. I mean, that's what pops into my head, personally. But our brains are so magic. They give us an infinite amount of things that can pop into our head just from a single phrase. And from those infinite things, any of those are visual. Those are visual tools. You use them when you write, as you're typing up your scene and visualizing it. That's the root of all the things you need for when you want to make a scene, when you want to take your ideas and make them into visual for film or for photographs. You've got all those tools already. So I'd like to propose what I do, which is create a lot of visuals. I do storyboards quite a lot. I do filmmaking, I do directing, and a few different things. But we tend to process a lot of storyboards. So what are those? Those are the little pictures we draw to tell you what you're going to shoot in the scene. And we use them to plan the shoot, we use them to plan visual effects, we use them to budget, to just decide where the camera goes and what's going to be shot on the day. Or you make them look fancy and you go, hi, this is my idea, please give me money. So they're a really handy tool if you can use them to make your ideas come to life. I've been doing it for about 10 years, and you can do it in all sorts of styles. You can do color, you can do simple, you can do them from photographs, from paint, in the computer from scratch. And when I work with a director, you walk into the room and you're kind of the easiest meeting they're going to have that day. You're there to go, what are your ideas? I can draw them for you. And it's kind of like art therapy, or that time in school when you get to have art class, and so the pressure's off. It's not about budget and schedule and things like that. We're probably the most fun meeting they have that day. So for me, it's a really fun job. What else? I also started in theater. Theater is where I learned everything to begin with. You've got this nice big stage, and with the movement and the light and the action, you hope that the audience is going to look at the right place on stage. But what we're really lucky with in filmmaking is you get to pick. You get to decide what's important. You can take this little object here and make it the most important thing in the scene by putting your camera right on it. And now all of that behind me doesn't matter. This is what's important. So that ability to choose is what's quite exciting to me about film. And that's, for me, the only really big difference between stage and film is you get to pick, which, I don't know, if you're a control freak, it's really fun. Sometimes I get to work on bigger movies, which is really fun. We had a ninja squad on Wonder Woman that was brought in to just kind of rework some of the action sequences, so we got to sit there and pitch our ideas for action things like, I don't know, is she gonna pick up a train and whirl it over her head? Things like that for weeks, just coming up with different concepts for what could happen in a scene. That's an amazing job to do. It was super fun. What else? I've also produced 3 independent feature films. The middle one there was my first shot as a director. I was able to start using the things I'd learned in storyboarding to make visuals for my story in the film. And I'm going to go over a lot of those techniques with you today, so you can kind of learn a little bit about staging and framing and taking that vague idea or that really specific thing like backstory and put it into your shots. To me, it all starts with the script. That script gives you so much information. You have so many tools. I mean, who's in the scene? What are they doing? Where are we? What time period are we in? Why are we here? And how are we going to show that? All of those things start from the script, so we're mining it for information for the visuals. And you have tools, both emotional and technical, that you can use to start discerning what you're going to put. So mood and atmosphere and psychology, these things are all really important. Can we show that backstory? Can we show that this character didn't have money for a while? Can we, what's the actor's face expression going to be at that point in the scene? Can we use subtext in imagery? And also we have a lot of technical tools, like where's the camera going to be? That's how we set up our frame, the blocking of the actors, how everything moves with the camera, with the actors, what kind of lighting are we going to use, and what objects you put in the scene and what environment you put them in. All of that starts to build on each other to make your visual picture. And these basic things that you absolutely use to start your writing with, we also use that in design and imagery. Because I think you can tell all of these visually. And so you've already got a really big chunk of that toolkit that you need to start making things go visual. For example, the setting. I mean, are we in the Amazon? Are we trying to lug a boat up a hill? You can get very specific with it and show it visually. Are we a bunch of centuries-old vampires in a flatting situation in New Zealand in the modern era? Okay, well, how do you show that with kitchen design? Are you a newly freed slave who's got a really fantastic outfit on and on a vengeance quest? Can we show that with how the camera's placed to make him seem heroic? Can we show that with the costume itself? Subtext is a hard one. It's where you kind of take symbols that are familiar. So we have a bit of an out-of-focus angel there, and you're trying to hint at something about the character with what symbols you kind of insert into the scene. And those can be interpreted in any way, but it's just kind of your way of pushing a little bit more storytelling into a shot. And you can use things like color and makeup and costume and light to kind of create a character arc. So from the beginning of the film to the end of the film, from the beginning of the series to the end of the series, showing the decline or change of a character. And that is super fun as well. What else? Go this way, click, back. You can also, how do you make it feel like something horrible is going to happen in a suburban street? Okay, well, let's use silhouettes. Let's bring in some smoke, use lighting. So you can kind of immerse yourself in the atmosphere of what's going to happen and use that for your foreshadowing, apply it to your plot. And point of view. When you write a story, the point of view of who you're illustrating is super important, and we also do that with our shots. We have to choose with every single shot we do, from whose point of view are we seeing this shot? Let's see. So cinema is a matter of what's in the frame and what's out, and I love this quote because it's so true. Basically, you can have any number of ideas, but on the day, in the camera, you're deciding what are we seeing and what are we not. Am I looking at you guys, or is the camera turned this way and we're looking at the screen behind me? What are we showing? Sorry, one second. Got it. All right. So let's take a bit of script and see where we start to take these ideas and ask the questions we need to get through it. Let's say we've got this text. It's a city street at night. Figure in a long coat walks alone. Suddenly they stop. They're being followed. That's not a ton of information. We don't know what city we're in. We don't know what era this is. And when I sit down with the director, my first thing I need to do is ask a lot of questions. I'm trying to read their mind. I'm trying to take the visions that are in their head and put them down on paper for the rest of the crew. So this is sort of what starts clicking in my mind. So, okay, where's the camera? First off, we got a person walking down the street. Are they going this way? Are they going around a corner? Is the camera in their face? Is it above them? Is it behind them? Is it on their feet? If it's on their feet, are there cobblestones? Is the ground wet? Where's the street lamp then? Is that going to make a big shadow? You can choose the infinite places to put the camera, except for maybe below the ground, unless you have a glass floor, in which case you can do. But we start to ask all these questions to narrow down exactly what are we going to see. So we're going to start with a close-up of the eyes, and then move to a side shot where we walk with them. That's kind of, if you start asking questions, which when we're working on scripts, that's also what I do, is like, oh, what would happen if you put this character there? It's the same kind of mindset, the same kind of thinking. It's to ask questions until you get really specific things nailed down. Let's get more specific. Our main subject is usually a human being. And we start to use in the storyboard frames different angles to show exactly how close or how far we are from the subject matter. So when you're right up in their face, it's an extreme close-up. You're seeing every expression. The eyebrow goes up and down, and it's going up and down 2 feet on the screen. So those are quite tight, important shots. And then as you drift further and further from the subject, so you can see the whole body, you see the whole scene, where are they? That gives you a whole different sense of it. So we start to use these basic shots to line it up. And then we get a lot of these typical ones you'll see. So you have close-ups, where you go right into the eye, right onto the paper, right onto things, and then pull farther and farther away until you get to an establishing shot. Where are we? Are we in Paris? And then maybe take a drone, and let's say we're in Paris, let's go over the Eiffel Tower. You can also take your camera low, high, anywhere around the subject, and those angles give you a different feel. You can put the camera into the eye of the actor and look down at their hands. Have they just killed someone? Are they covered in blood? And really see their point of view exactly. Also, typical framing, you get a 2-shot, 2 people talking, then you cut to one head, cut to the other head. Super basic. And then maybe also do a wide. Frankly, if you get those 3 setups, you're pretty much covered for most scenes. But it's good to do a little bit more fun stuff. You can have things nudge into the edge of the frame. We call that being dirty in the frame. So a little bit of plants dirty on the side there. We love dirty shots. And one of my favorites, the Dutch shot. Yay. I think it's the best shot in film. Don't overuse them, though. Wait for the good point and just use them sparingly. But they're really powerful when used well. It seems really kind of fun and disorientating when you do the angled shots. After that, we get more specific, and we get into how the camera moves. You can take a crane and go up the building, up the person, and get those rising shots or lowering shots. You see a lot of those when you want something to feel grand or establish something. Or you can tilt, so say you're on a tripod, you're gonna go down to the box she's looking at, and then up to her face. So those are tilt shots. You can do something called pulling focus, where you're gonna rotate the lens, and first one object's in focus, and then the other object's in focus. So her talking, and then him talking, or her face as he's talking, then cut to his face as she's talking. And so you can use that pulling of focus to really control where the eye is going. You can pull into the subject or out from the subject. And I like to show these camera moves with little tiny arrows. You can really do it any way you want. You can also use, kind of bigger open arrows to show the movement of people in scenes. Frankly, as long as you're getting the information down, that's what's important. But and sometimes we get unusual shots, so it's going from here down to here, or maybe it's making an S shape. So we'll try to come up with a shape that shows that moving diagonal pan down the stairs. So we kind of break the frame a little and show, here's the beginning, here's the end. And then they know what camera to rent, what crane to rent, how far away are we going to be in the scene that day. They're all kind of useful tools. Then we can get into some more complex shots. For example, a dolly tracking shot. And you see these a lot in, Wes Anderson films and stuff. So you'll start here on one subject, so the people far away in the hotel room, and then you'll track over to, oh, actually, this new subject is these 2 people over in the corner. And you can use fun and complex transitions. So say we're starting in this scene, we pass a tree, and all of a sudden we're in this scene. We call those wipes. I find the most common wipe is a tree. I don't know why, it's mysterious to me. But yeah, dozens and dozens of tree wipes over the years, but they work. It helps the editor kind of cut between 2 scenes in an unusual way. Also, when you have objects in space, the background and the foreground, they move at different rates. So you get things moving like this as you pass with the camera. So more of the background or foreground can be revealed as the scene goes by. So that's called parallax. And when you have that, it kind of makes things come to life. It's kind of the difference between a still photo and kind of a moving photo. And when you're on a tripod and you're going this way, you can kind of do a funky fisheye, where you go past, and the subject's very big as it goes past you, and then it goes away again. So those are just some of the basic camera moves. And if you just use those really, really basic camera moves, you can totally get a movie done. Like, you can totally get a story done, you can totally get stuff done. But many of the films, as he says, are just photographs of talking people. A lot of my work, I do things like factual TV, where we're inside the sun or inside the human heart and then flying out and seeing what that looks like. And I find that really exciting, because then I'm not just drawing talking heads, because a lot of the time you're just drawing, there's a head, two heads in a car, two heads walking down the street. So how do we make different shots? How do we kind of add more intrigue and more depth to our shots? I like to use different types of composition. We can do it with lights and composition. We start with perspective, and you can see for this first plane, we've got 1 point perspective, and you're just really, really front on to the horizon. Everything's disappearing straight back. Or you kind of angle to the side a little bit, where you're looking at something on the corner. And when you do that, you get 2 points disappearing into the horizon. And then if you pull up from there, now you're getting 3 points disappearing into the horizon. And it suddenly becomes dynamic. You see the thing, it's not a box, it's like actually in 3D. How that looks on screen is, you can see in the 1 point, it's just very focused, very clean. It's almost theatrical when you're straight on like that. And then when you go to the 2 point perspective, it gets interesting, because you can put something over here and something over here that this person can't see, because they're on 2 different planes. And the 3 point, it's a little bit more dynamic, it's a little bit more alive. Mostly, those are really good for the hero looking over Gotham kind of shots. And I find a lot of the time, if a client or a director says it needs to be more dynamic, they probably want a 3 point perspective, or they just want to put the camera lower or higher at angles. That's usually what people mean when they say, oh, we need the shot to be dynamic, or worst case, do a Dutch. I like to follow methods from classical art. When we trained in theater, we trained in all that scenic painting and all the really classical ways of drawing and rendering. And you can kind of use the same kind of compositions when you're laying out your shots in film. So with symmetry, it's really quite nice. It's quite flat on, very, very formal. You can also break the screen into quads. So up on the top there, you've got quadrants. And if you put something up in this corner and something up in this corner, even if they're at 2 different depths from the camera, it makes a really interesting picture, because you can have something going on here that isn't seen here, and vice versa. You can almost tell 2 different stories in the same shot. And if you do into thirds, there's something called the rule of thirds, which some people find useful. Basically, you put lines in a third of the way through the screen, both directions, and then you align things in the screen about a third of the way in on those main lines, or on the 4 corners, your points of interest. And it works to make sort of a balanced feeling frame. Obviously, these are just tools. They're not rules. So I also find the point of highest contrast is where the eye goes first. So when you have a really big dramatic silhouette and bright light behind it, your eye is just going to go straight there. And you, like the woman in the lower frame, you just go straight to her, because she's the most high contrast thing in the picture. The film noirs were really, really good at this. If you watch those or watch Hitchcock movies, they always know where to put the focus. And I find a lot of times with really complex visual effects shots, like in, there's an explosion and also planes going on here and things. If you feel like the shot looks ugly or too busy, it's probably because they didn't pick a good point of contrast. Close-ups are really fun. They basically just scream, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at this, it's important. They're great. And it's a really fun way to sneak in bits of story, bits of backstory, and bits of exposition without having to have an actor say it out loud. So if we're looking at the razor in his hands, you don't have to go, I'm thinking of slitting your neck right now. It's nice. Not slitting your neck, but having shorthand to kind of like clue the audience in. Also, when you put the camera low or high, you can make your subject feel powerful or weak with the perspective. So once you go low, it's like, ooh, looking up at the teacher, oh, this thing is more important than me, it's looming. And above, it makes the subject feel quite small and weak. If you're a short person, that's nice if you can put the camera up this way, just saying. And also creating shapes with the blocking of the actors or with the objects you put in the scene is also a really nice way to point the eye to what's important or to make it bounce around the screen. And another fun one is with the staging of the actors. You can really use your staging and how the actors move to tell what's going on with them in terms of their mental state or their relationships. For example, on the top 3 slides there, they all kind of show isolation, but with different ways. In the first one, she's looking off at something we don't see. She's alone. In the second one, she's very small in a very big shot. And actually, anytime you put something very small in a very big shot, it's very good for making it feel isolated, alone, kind of overpowered. It's a really nice composition that way. And in the third shot, she's doing something different than the rest of the group. That's good blocking to show that she's different from the others. In the second 2 frames, you can see a relationship that's very different in the beginning of the film, where they're quite apart from each other, to at the end of the film, they're quite close together. And across the bottom there, we've got a nice little budding romance, which you can see from the shy beginnings to kind of romantic, ooh, we're getting together, to the actual intimacy. And you can see it very clearly with the camera. In the second, we kind of feel like we're spying on them, which is really fun. And actually spying as a tool, I know Hitchcock was a fan, but you look through objects, you look through windows, you look through portals. It's a really fun way of making the viewer also feel like a camera, like they're peeking into something they shouldn't see. So I quite enjoy those shots too. And you can also use your depth of field. We were talking about the focus of the camera on one object or another. When you have one thing as the subject and everything back there is all out of focus, it brings hyper-focus to what the object is that the camera's on. So everything else just goes away. It's kind of like being nearsighted, which is great, because I don't see any of you. I'm just seeing people here. It's great. But yeah, it helps you really focus the audience, focus the eye. You can put them through objects, things like that. And then, we skipped ahead quite a bit. We'll get to that in a sec. Color palette is a hugely powerful tool, and you can have a lot of fun with that, because with color, you can stimulate the audience by immersing them in a single mood or a single palette, or you can make things really pop with emphasis, especially if you use opposing colors. A lot of the big blockbusters these days, you'll notice over and over they use teal and orange, because it looks good on skin tones, but also those are 2 opposite colors on a color wheel, and that makes things pop and makes them feel quite visual. And when you use all of these tools kind of together with the contrast and the lighting and the staging and the colors, and you use them in a really subtle way, you can make your frames look like paintings. You can actually make it feel like you're alive in classical art. And that's quite a nice place to be. But how do you start with this? You've got ideas, you want to make them visual. What do you do? When it's your turn, and you're like, oh crap, I can't draw. And most people I know who say, look, I can't direct because I can't draw. I don't know I don't know where to start. I can't make things. But I've been in a lot of meetings where a director is prepared ahead of time and just done some stick figures on the page. And you know what? I know exactly what they're trying to say. They want a 2-shot with 2 heads. The basic lines you would need to do this are all right there. If you can make a triangle and a circle and a square, I have a theory that you can probably make a storyboard. You're gonna be fine. We'll get through this. Most people can do stick figures, right? All right, let's make it more complex. Add another line this way, add 2 lines down, you got shoulders. Now you're already more sophisticated. If you can make kind of an oval instead of a circle for the head, and maybe add a half circle for the torso, and then you can make the legs straight down and the arms straight down, look how much more complex that is. It looks like you know how to draw people. It's great. And most people can draw a happy face. Happy faces are fine. Well, can you make it an oval? Can you put a cross across it? That's one of the ways we use to denote a person in a storyboard. We'll just put a cross where the face is, because your eyes end up exactly halfway across your head. I know you're all looking at if mine do now. I don't know, let me know later. But if you can add eyes or ears, cool. But if you can even just do that oval with a cross, we know you're drawing a face, and we know it's the front. And when you want to show like a person with head and shoulders, just draw a little half circle. If you leave the chin out in front, that's from the front with that cross. If you don't have a cross and you just let the shoulders go up and over, that's the back. And two kind of offset ovals, that's from the side. You've got so many techniques now. And also if you can draw kind of a blobby figure that even if you trace it, that looks vaguely like a person, you can do a crowd scene now, because you just have to do that like a whole bunch of times. Or once they get far away, just draw little circles for heads or dots. Depends on how far away you are. But using those really, really stupid basic techniques, I've drawn you this fantastic storyboard today. It is the best thing I've ever done, and I'm so proud. It's pretty crude, right? But the question is, can you communicate what's going to be in a frame with that? So if you can switch that to communicate what's going to be on the screen, do we know we need a face and some soup cans? Do we know we need a guy running? It's on a rooftop. Oh God, all the scheduling for that and the health and safety. Do we know we have a guy with a gun? Yeah, we did figure that out from the sketch. So it doesn't have to be amazing, amazing fine art. It just has to be some scribbles on a napkin that communicate to the people who are going to work with you what exactly were you going to do that day. So yeah, you can do this. I believe in you. For example, on my film, you'd think I would have done like really awesome storyboards. I was doing jobs up until like the day we flew to go shoot, so I had to do them in a hurry right at the end. And so I'd try to get one decent frame, and it was like barely decent, and then I just scribbled the rest, so I knew exactly what coverage we needed to shoot that day. And you know what? That also turned out fine. We got all the shots we needed, and we were able to cut them together into a film. And a lot of these techniques I just showed you, they really are what I use when I tell stories. You look through objects, you check what's in focus, what's out of focus. You center the frame and make it quite formal with the staging. You close up on something when it's important. You use the props to kind of show where are we, what's this setting. So all of that, it just comes together very slowly over time. You practice. For drawing, watch tutorials online. Start with those stick figures. Keep at it. You'll get better. It'll be fine. What else? I do get a lot of people who are like, I can't direct. And honestly, I thought that too. Nobody had ever said, hey, you, designer person, try to direct something. But you know what? It's not just for special, like, art people with talents or something. I just completely disagree. I think basically it's a lot of practice, a lot of passion, and a lot of persistence. Talent is great if you can, great, but it's a bonus. Nearly anybody can sing a lullaby. Not everybody's gonna be Pavarotti, but you might be able to put a child to sleep with whatever you're doing with that. So there's no excuse not to take a crack at making your ideas into visuals, especially if you've got a script. You want to sell it to someone, you want to show someone how it could be shot. Try to draw it out. You never know. And if you feel like you need permission, like you, person there, you direct, well, consider this your permission, because especially if you're in this room and you're a woman or a minority, when I walk into rooms with directors, 95 out of 100 times it's a white guy. So we need more people out there doing that. So give it a go. And I know I've covered a lot of really technical things, but you don't necessarily have to follow all of these like they're set rules, like, oh, you can't cross a line, oh, you can't plan outside of these specific frames. These are just guidelines you don't have to follow. And once you learn them, it's really easy to go off and make your own variant. Like, actually, that frame up there is kind of nice. Instead of just doing front of the stage, reverse of the audience, you can drift off and do whatever comes to your mind. Make sure you make things that you really care about. The more personal, the more you put into it that like feels like it comes from you, the easier it'll be to find those visuals, I think. Do remember when you're writing your scripts, when you're drawing your storyboards, we're kind of on the front line before casting, before crew come in. And so if you're drawing people of all kinds, if you're writing people of all kinds, that means people of all kinds get into films. And that makes for more interesting viewing for everybody. So yeah, remember that it's quite a powerful thing to be able to communicate visually. And you already have these tools and some stick figures. You're ready to go take over the world.
Thank you. That was very interesting.
Are you going to draw some now?
Yeah, I will after the show.
Okay.
I was struck. I loved your last remark about including everybody, because that's where it starts.
It is. Like, it's so easy to just, I get a brief from a client, I draw a lot of adverts, and it just says a man and a woman. Well, I now, as the artist, can choose what kind of women I draw, what kind of man I draw. Are they short? Are they tall? Are they all just thin white people? And most of the time that's what they're asking for, and it's up to you to kind of go, hey, could we try this person here?
Okay.
It's the tiniest power, but it's the only one I've got is to go, hey, what about this?
I love that. So how does a woman like you end up in what I thought was a male-oriented business? What happened?
I feel like I kind of always been in boy jobs, typically. When I was a kid, I was in a lot of shows. I did the singing and the dancing and all that, and I hurt my knee. And for a whole semester, I couldn't do any dancing or anything, so I hung out backstage with the crew and learned how to paint the sets. And I thought, ooh, this is fun. So then when I was choosing what to do for college and stuff, I was like, yeah, that painting the set thing's really cool. And when I got back into shows, I was like, I know I'm supposed to be singing right now, but are you going to use that color? I was just a bit distracted by the rest of the stuff and the whole picture. So I thought, I'm going to learn more about that. And that led to going into that for film, which I studied VFX, which is the 3D and visual effects, and doing all the little clicking on the computer. And I thought that was kind of boring, but I liked doing the storyboarding for it. So it helped me kind of figure out the difference between theater and film and like, what's all this camera stuff. And that's just happened to be the job. So.
And storyboarding, I was trying to explain it to what to use storyboarding. I love that you say visual storytelling. Yeah. What is it? Where does the storyboarder come in if it's not a commercial?
2 places. Either you're there for pre-production. For example, there's someone shooting a short film in LA today. And last night, I sent them some really scribbly pages very quickly so that they can get to set this morning and say, okay, guys, we've got 9 setups. Camera A goes here, camera B goes here. Production can budget how many cameras, how many people, what are we seeing? Set designers can go, oh, we're only looking that way, so do I have to dress the rest of the room? The costumer is like, she got shoes in that shot. Everybody can kind of make decisions based off what we've drawn. You can also do this with a really good shot list or with like a ground plan of the scene, but I find for quickness and immediacy, it's just really good to have a storyboard planned.
Is that how because you directed your own movies, is that how you started with the drawings or with the text or with the idea?
A friend and I co-wrote the script together, so for me, when I get into scripts, I see pictures first. So I'll see the girl on the bed with all the cards around her face, and then I'll be like, oh crap, what does that mean? How do we get to that shot? And then I kind of work backwards formulating a story for that. And then my writing partner, she's quite good at spine and making sure I stay within the arc of the story. So it's not just a cool thing for visual sake. It's gotta, if it doesn't fit with the plot and the arc of the character, it's gotta go. So I write visually, then when I get to the storyboards, it's like, well, I know one of those shots already. And then I figure out what other coverage you might need for the edit, basically.
Okay. I want to open it up to the audience right now. We have a very fancy throw mic. If you want to talk into it, you have to talk like this.
Zal ik hem voor je gooien?
Yeah,
I've never seen anything
thrown
like
a
that.
lovely assistant.
Cat's
Any questions?
We have time for one
Elizabeth?
question, so it better be a good one.
Okay, over there.
Over there, over there.
Oh, I'm glad I'm not
Okay.
throwing it. I'm really bad at
Here you
aiming.
are.
Brilliant.
Yes.
Okay. Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for your presentation. It was really cool. So I was wondering, when you storyboard, to what degree do you draw inspiration from comic books, which, for example, use a lot of Dutch angles and these kind of things?
I think there's some of the most interesting storyboarding in the world going on inside comic books. Those lucky guys get a lot longer to do a single page, though. So in terms of like how you ink, how you create the image, there's so much crossover. Comic books really are sort of a visual map of their story, and so we're just basically making the comic book of what the film is going to be. So I find a lot of relation, I find the art relates, and I think the more you study them, the more interesting ideas you can get.
Okay. Thanks.
You throw it back to me. Thanks.
More questions?
Really the last one then, because...
Okay, yeah.
Yeah? I can't see anything. Is there a question? Yes? Oh, it's very close. Oh.
You said that you start out with the script normally to dissect what you want, but you also mentioned the Wonder Woman example that you said we were thinking of stuff for a couple of weeks. Then what is your briefing for that? Just come up with that? Because in the end it starts out with a situation, a problem that Wonder Woman has to solve. But either they say she throws around the train or you come up with it, but then you change the script. How does the interaction work between those two parts?
Well, there's 2 points where you do the storyboarding. One is to plan ahead. The other is when you're about to do visual effects, because that is often like the biggest ticket item you're going to put in a film is all those visual effects, and then they're in so many more shots than you'd think. And a way you can save a lot of money is to storyboard your visual effects, because me redrawing it with pencils is a heck of a lot cheaper than like 1,000 guys working for a month and then you have to re-render it. So for Wonder Woman, yeah, that was a done script. It was a really rare situation as well. We were just in there during the post-production, so in terms of one of the sequences, they wanted to develop more story beats, and so we were given a little bit of freedom to kind of make proposals. Usually, like for me, that's quite rare. Usually you can suggest something in a meeting, but you don't usually have free rein to make suggestions. You got to kind of, if you want to put ideas out, you have to convince the person in the room that they thought of them.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I think it was very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Even elkaar gesproken.